For those who don't know me, I am Andrew Bertino. I was a producer in Cohort 7. We're missing a few people, but right now I'm not sure if they're going to come in later or what. We're basically just going to give a brief overview of what our experiences were as a whole at EA and kind of give you an understanding of what the company's like, what kind of perks you get, that stuff, and then we'll go on each individual person and we'll talk about their position. One of the biggest perks is moving automatically. I don't know why. So I'm just going to talk as fast as I possibly can. Which is normal, I do talk fast. So there's flexible hours. Obviously, everybody's got their own core hours. It depends mostly on the team. Mine, for example, is 9:30 to 6:30. Zach's is 10 to 7. Andrew's is whenever he feels like it. So you kind of come in and you do whatever you for the most part, as long as you get your tasks done, it's pretty good. Nobody's really too concerned as long as you do your tasks and you're there for your core team hours. A lot of times you can take time off if you need to. For the most part, all of our managers have been pretty awesome and flexible in terms of hours. It's a lot like FIEA, it really is. I mean, you're here to be EA employees. It's almost the same. Cube setup's very similar. You get the same awesome chairs, just the same kind of work hard, play hard mentality. There's obviously tons of industry experience there, and the company's been around forever. They've been pumping out bad titles left and right. I mean, I personally literally had a conversation with Roy Harvey in the elevator about his iPhone 5 or 4S. So, that's the kind of conversations you can have at EA with people who have been there forever. I mean, we got conversations with Jason Barnes and stuff like that. RDV is another huge benefit. It's a sports complex. It's the giant, huge super gym. It actually has a sign in I-4. It's absurd. You get a huge major discount for being an intern. Actually got it free. I think for regular employees it's like $10 a month or something really targeted. $11 a paycheck. Yeah, it's really, really cheap. Obviously, a huge benefit is you get to work on popular titles. I mean, we publish Madden, all the big stuff, NCAA. We're done NBA now. Those are people play these games. They're huge. Obviously, you get to work. I didn't directly, but the other people got to work with cool stuff like Dev Kids and Connect. That's obviously really cool. EA Store. This is awesome. You get to buy games really cheap. So like Battlefield 3, first day, use line out in the lobby. Awesome. $10 PC game. Fantastic. Free Starbucks and coffee on every floor. If you like cereal, it's heaven. I don't drink Starbucks much, but it's delicious when I have attempted. This is the best part. The ducks. There's a pond. Like there's windows and stuff. So like when you come into work, there's actually the sun, which actually does kind of suck because it glares on your screen, but there are dark. This is good. There are a lot of company events, which I'll discuss a little more in depth later, but we get a lot of free food and things. They do this. Beer too. Lots of beer. Life of an intern. I don't need to say anything else. This is literally what we did. We jumped into a ball pit. This is actually a conference room. This is pretty cool. This is where they do a lot of bad meetings. But obviously there is work to be done. So I mean, the life of an intern for us really is you really just get thrown into the fire. It's a lot like FIEA. You get in there, you're expected to own something, you're expected to do work fast, efficiently, and good. There's no getting coffee. It's not the intern experience that we've come to kind of know of before. So you definitely expect to own something. Yeah, there's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of meetings. I don't have too many, but a lot of people do. It's a real job, so you do expect to be participating and actively participating in these meetings. Again, you get a lot of chance to learn a lot of gas technology processes for people who've been doing this for 10, 15 years. You get to work closely with your managers and leads who are always helpful for the most part. I think all of us have really good managers. They will give you 2 official review dates throughout the process, one in the middle and one at the end, to kind of gauge where you are, what you've done, have you felt good about what you're doing, or you need improvement in these areas, that sort of thing. This is actually something Shauna started this year, was bi-weekly intern speakers, so every Thursday, 2 weeks, we would get somebody to come in from the company. They're really smart people. Like I said, Jason Barnes came in and talked to us about his experiences. We've had HR people come in and talk to us about what their roles are as HR and how their job is to kind of make us transition and have better employee work relationship. There's monthly movie nights. I think we watched Transformers and Thor was the other one. Did you watch Thor? No, it was X-Men. It was at first class. Yeah, free pizza, more beer. Good times. Intern dinner, which is planned for next week. Yeah, totally Texas Day Brazil, which if you haven't been is fantastic. It's $50 a head, but it's super delicious, and it's all the Brazilian meat you can eat forever. So mega food coma. So here's some of the events that we did kind of like offer over time. There's a lot of stuff. Again, our second week there, we had Madden NCAA back to football, which is basically you were able to participate in a flag football tournament. Like about 5 or 6 of us were actually on a flag football team. We lost our first game, but it was cool. It was totally Four Rivers catered food. It was fantastic. It was yummy. There was a live championship game with announcers and music, and the field had an EA logo. And had freaking NFL cheerleaders. I mean, the Bucks cheerleaders were there. That was fantastic. Got pictures with them. So there's a Halloween party. There was a haunted house. I didn't actually go to the haunted house, but I heard it was kind of cool. from what people told me. There's pictures of it in a couple seconds, but there were some pretty damn cute kids, I'm not gonna lie. There was SWAT people, and there was a Leia, there was like a 5-year-old Leia that was just adorable. And it was kind of hard to work for that 3-hour period. Kids were just going by and grabbing candy from us. It was a really good time. There was the Golden Spatula Tournament, which is kind of like a secret thing. They don't do it every year, but this year they had it, and it's basically people within teams can compete each other against an NCAA. And then the final game was actually like an hour and a half. It was live. We had free pizza and drinks, and it literally went to final times. It was awesome. It was a pretty good game. Sadly, we still have to work though. It's still a job. And I think Verge is the only one in Alpha right now, so he can attest to the hours. Ken suck in Alpha, but you know they do feed you every night. At least if you're in Alpha, they feed you. Here's some pictures of the Halloween party. As you can see, the left top rightmost one is basically our lobby was turned into a huge dining hall. That was pretty cool. Obviously, a lot of employees were able to dress up and kind of participate in these events. Actually, I think Alex Howell was a Cohort 6 producer. AJ's wife is on the right, I believe. The left picture's kind of dark, but that was our haunted house, I believe. And then, as I mentioned, there were a lot of kids and candy and all kinds of cool stuff. This is the flag football team, yay. We almost won. Thanks to him, because he ran like a 90-yard touchdown back up being touched.
On a 50-yard field.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So this is good. Like I said, they had a tent, they had cheerleaders, they had music, they had punt pass game. It was really over the top and pretty awesome. I think that's it for all the cool perks and fun stuff. Did I miss something? It's on this guy. He did stuff.
Yeah.
For Tiger, I think, right?
All right, yeah, done with the fun stuff. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty, boring stuff.
Yeah,
we actually had it.
Yeah, made it work.
A lot of us at EA do things that we're not allowed to talk about, and so instead of like making this huge explanation every time, I'm just going to replace it with the word dirt. So if there's something that we can't talk, just dirt. All right, I wasn't. We can go.
I thought you grabbed the mouse.
Yeah, take the mouse. I was inept. I couldn't handle it. You know, producers were simple.
I was a software engineer on Tiger Woods PGA Tour 13. I am a software engineer. So there's a lot of work you got to do. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of the work I was doing. The first thing I got into was rendering, which is kind of a nightmare to run into, but I do anyway. And so one of the things I had to do was actually work on shaders, which thanks to Paul, I was able to actually work in HLSO and do stuff. So I had to work on converting from YUV formats to RGB formats. If you have no idea what that is, don't worry about it. Whatever. It's just different color formats so that we could do things with that in Tiger Woods. The second thing they had me do is they had me work on input with Connect. I had to kind of dissect the depth in the color streams from Connect and put it into use and derpy things with that. And right now I'm working on tutorials, just a tutorial system to kind of teach the person how we play this game. And so I work on state flow for the tutorials, making sure that each tutorial transitions nicely into the next. And I work with UI and audio. I have to work with both the audio team and the UI team to make sure that everything works smoothly. Some useful Kung Fu things that I learned here was, let's go ahead and get changed out. All right. I had to work on, of course you have to know debugging. I mean, that's key. And you get that so much here, especially in like RPG round, you're getting capstone, like it's huge. So just learning what all the different errors in the debugger means, actually debugging in memory, looking at the individual bytes and making sure everything is appropriate for that certain data type is super useful Kung Fu at EA. Architecture is pretty huge. We learn a lot of architecture in the second semester here. You're going to get a ton of that, and so that's a really important thing, structuring your code correctly. One of the things you want to avoid is coupling classes together, coupling any kind of code together, creating circular dependencies on within your code. If you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, just whatever. And code versatility, just the actual ability to work in different types of code is huge because you're not always working in the same code at EA. I mean, you have to change different code bases, so you have to be able to work on all sorts of things. And documentation, of course. You have to document all your code, whether it be Doxygen. I actually use Doxygen there. You use wiki pages. You have to document, and you have to tell other people, what is all this code that I'm making? What is all this stuff that I'm making? So documentation is very, very useful at EA. Some lessons I learned on the first few weeks there that I kind of didn't learn from, like I didn't go in knowing these things. One of the things is that readability of your code is much more important than optimization. Sometimes just simple optimizations in your code can make the code unreadable. And when other people are trying to look at your code and if it's unreadable to them, that's unacceptable. You have to focus on more on readability than just optimization, especially micro optimizations. Macro optimizations you want to always get in, but readability over optimization. You want to use your source control wisely, and by source control I mean like perforce. So you guys use perforce here. So at EA, I didn't realize this, but you should only sync the latest when it's only necessary, because sometimes when you sync the latest, you're going to have bad things happen to whatever you're working on. So I lost a few good days just by syncing the latest and just having a build that's either broken or I just can't use it. So only sync the latest when necessary. And on that, always know what revision you're on. So whatever you sync to, know what revision you're on. So if you have a problem, you go to another person, say, they'll ask you, well, what revision are you on? Oh, I'm on this revision. Oh, you need to actually get you need to get a more recent version of your code base. So use your source control wisely. Try to estimate your time correctly. This is the hardest thing for programmers to do. Like, how do we estimate time? So I had a nice little formula that I found that I kind of like. It's not mine, I didn't invent it. What you do is you have 6 parts. One part, the best possible time. If best case scenario, how long is that going to take? 4 parts, well, what is it likely going to take? And then 1 part, well, if worst case scenario, what is it going to take? And then you just divide it by 6, and that usually gives you actually a pretty good estimate, for me at least, of estimating my time correctly. And this works not just for programming, but it works like across the board. It's like a life equation. The thing about programming is usually this worst case scenario is like huge. So like, oh, best case I'll get it done in like, I don't know, half a day. Probable case, maybe 1 day. Worst case scenario, a month. So it kind of weighs it out nicely. And I also learned that Boston Green donuts are delicious. Every time you break the bill on Tiger Tea, you have to buy donuts. And so you're always excited when the bill breaks because you get a nice little treat in the morning. Unless you break it, then you have to go buy donuts. And we'll bring on Miss Camilla.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Quick passing of the torch. All right, for those of you who don't know, I'm Carmela Zanero. I was one of the design interns, and I worked on Tiger Woods Online. It's great to see so many new cohort faces, and thank you for coming. All right, I'll just get right into it. All right, so all in a day's work, I had the opportunity to actually work as a producer and a designer. So I felt very privileged to do that. So first, I'll talk about my work as a producer. So as a producer, you actually have the opportunity to manage teams and projects. My second week at my internship, my manager had to go on vacation. He's like, all right, you're in charge with 1 other producer. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And of course, I was nervous at first, but then the coworkers are so very welcoming. You'll find that people at EA are extremely down-to-earth people who are passionate for games just like you do, and they just love coming to work every day. Also, I found that I wasn't glued to my desk, which this was fantastic. I wasn't just glued into my work. I was up and about, and I met so many people during my internship. I worked with a ton of different departments, the developers, the UI artists, the dev team, designers, producers, the engineers on the platform team, quality assurance, and marketing. 2 departments that you had absolutely no experience here at EA, at FIEA, but at EA, you'll be working with them constantly as a producer. So it's great to actually get that experience working with different people on different floors and seeing how a project is produced from beginning to end. Also, it was so nice coming in and feeling like a real member of the team. You and your work matters. As an intern at EA, everything that you're doing, you have actual responsibilities. You're going to be working with people, and they're going to go to you for your opinion. And they're going to go to you and report to you. I had a software engineer say that I was the closest thing he had to a manager in the past 6 months. So I thought that was a pretty great compliment. So as a designer, I worked on 3 main projects: Golf Challenge, which is on the Facebook, and Tiger Woods PGA Tour Online, and then a top secret project that I'm working on right now. It's the reason I get excited to go into work every day, and unfortunately I can't say anything about what I'm working on right now. And that's what you find that's different working in the industry. You're in your MBA, so you can't tell your friends, sometimes even your coworkers, your family, about what you're working on. So I come home from work, my parents say, hey, what'd you work on? And I said, awesome things that I can't tell you about. Also, some of the tasks that I'm doing: design docs, prototyping, brainstorming, things that you have experience with here at FIEA. take all of that to EA, to the industry, and actually hone those skills. It's really nice as a designer. I'm actually writing features, writing design docs, brainstorming with other industry professionals who have been there for years. It's really nice when they turn to you in a meeting and ask for your opinion. That is something I was not expecting at all from EA. And you have the possibility to get in on the ground floor of something completely new, which is what this top secret project is. The only thing my manager will let me say is that it is sports related, and it's fantastic because one of the fears that I know a lot of people have going to Tiburon, they're like, oh, I don't really like sports games. I don't really know if I'll be a good fit here. You know, as long as you are creative, you're passionate about what you do, and you're hardworking, you're going to fit right in. And you might have the chance to actually design features for something that's completely new and hasn't been seen before. You have the opportunity to give input and oversee design of new releases. This is what I had the opportunity to do. We released a new Tiger Woods online website. We completely reskinned it. And along the way, I had to oversee the overall design. I've never done website design before, so this is a pretty exciting opportunity for me. And then going in and working close with the UI artists and them asking your opinions. That's something that a lot of people don't have experience with as an intern, but at Tiburon, I was really happy to have that experience. And also, releasing a new multiplayer game mode for Tiger Woods Online. So this was a great experience because I was working closely with QA, bug tracking, making sure that we had just the right amount of user feedback for this multiplayer game mode, and overseeing it from beginning to end. And then managing it with marketing and seeing how the community responded. And then you get to accommodate the feature accordingly. Something that you don't have here at FIEA. You actually get to see what the community is saying about your releases in the industry. So we were happy to see that people were really excited about the game mode, and they're like, hey, thank you, we've been waiting for this a long time, so that's also very rewarding. So what will you learn? Well, as a producer, you have to be well-rounded and able to work with multiple departments for quality assurance. Be nice to them. They know your game inside and out. They're extremely hard workers in the industry. Sometimes they let you play Mass Effect 3 builds, which is awesome. Also, marketing. Be cooperative with marketing. This is something that I learned that I had no idea it was like this until I got in there. Marketing has no idea what your dev team demands are. They don't know when you need to release, or if you need to make this change, how long it's going to take, and you have to always constantly monitor what they're saying about your game to the public. So you need to be cooperative with them, and that was a great experience for me. Also, learn how to budget your time effectively. Joe touched on this a little bit. It's just as important for producers and designers, especially for producers, because if you're managing different projects and different teams at the same time, you need to be able to balance back and forth. When I said all in a day's work, those slides, pretty much all in a day's work. That's what you do on a daily basis. You're busy, but it's never ever busy work, and it's very rewarding. Another thing I learned, communication on all levels is key. So far you've had your RPP projects. I think this is a large class, so we've had about 6 people-sized groups, and I'm sure you've encountered communication breakdowns there. Try being on a 20-plus man team working with different departments on different floors. Communication breaks down all the time. It is so important to be in constant communication with people. And you even have communication breakdowns even over cubicle walls. I know we specifically have encountered that.
It's fun.
No.
Wait a minute, you told us we weren't stopping that game? We want to do more work on it.
Yeah, if we have time for a little anecdote, there was a tournament that I was supposed to get started. And I got the go-ahead from my boss and from people above me to go ahead and get started on it. But then just over the cubicle wall, the engineers had no idea that we were doing it.
The boss told us not to do it.
Yeah.
We were told not to do anything.
And then that was actually his team, the one that you were working with, and you weren't aware of it at all. So that's just between cubicle walls that communication breakdowns happen like that all the time. As a designer, if you don't know sports, don't be intimidated. Like I said, if you don't know anything about sports going in, I kind of was under the assumption that everybody there was stat fanatics, that they all knew about the stats and championships and jerseys, and I love sports, but I don't know specific teams sometimes or players. But as long as you are going there being hardworking, creative, and you are willing to learn anything that you don't know, then you're going to be a great fit. Also, bring everything to the table. Anything that you learned at FIEA, anything that you learned previously. I didn't know Photoshop before coming to FIEA. I used it all the time at FIEA. I'm sure you guys use it all the time. I use it every day at work. If you don't know anything, just be willing to ask. And for one instance, one of my software engineers had a lot of bugs in his depot, and he was supposed to put my game guide into the game. And I knew that he had a lot of bugs to go through, so I said, hey, if you just give that to me, I'll take care of that for you. And I wrote it in HTML. Something that I didn't know I was going to do that day, but I did it. And every day you might be doing something that you don't know if you're going to do it, you don't know if you're going to be using skills that you learned previously, but just bring everything that you know and be willing to push yourself out there and say, yes, I can do this, let me help out. Also, unfortunately, on the negative side of things, your work and projects will be cut. Here at FIEA, you do get that experience in your second semester, sadly. 1, 2, 3 of your capstone games might be cut. This might be the first year where none of them are cut, but I am a big proponent of it because I think it is a good experience. Because in the industry, you happen to come across this all the time. And usually it comes down to budget. It's something that you don't encounter here at FIEA, but there is a budget in the industry, it is a business. And while I've been an intern, I've had about 4 of the projects I've worked on cut, or shelved, as they like to say, which means that they're just going to put it away for now, and then might come back to life later, but right now we have to move on to something else. So at Tiburon, what I was the most happy to find out, you are not just a cog in the machine. You will not encounter either of these examples. I did not get coffee for anyone, and I was ecstatic about that. And I was never doing busy work. You're going to work with some fantastic people. Your coworkers are just down to earth. They don't treat you like an intern. I've had people tell me plans about what's going on next year, and before I had an offer, I said, well, I might need to get a replacement ramped up on this. And then they said, why? Are you going on sabbatical? And I said, no, I'm an intern. I don't know if I have a place here. So people really treat you like an employee, which is something that you might not get at very many internships, and something that I was really happy to learn. All right, now on to Patino.
It's me again.
Thank you.
I was actually about 2 desks away from Carmela, so I can confirm that she was never actually at her desk. She was always in meetings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did. My team, as Carmela kind of alluded to, I am on the on-demand team. We are definitely a different team. I am not a dev team. I never made a single feature that will ever go into a game. It's not sexy, but people need to do it. So we definitely support teams. We didn't create new features, we didn't add new things to games, we didn't come up with any new designs. What we did do was fix bugs, mostly on the server end. Obviously, if servers go down, games have to keep running. So we got to make sure that our servers are always constantly up and making sure we can make money. So obviously, our team did maintain servers, but they also maintained the dev line, so that the teams who are actually working on the games, like Carmela's team, could continually making new changes, add golf courses to it, make new tournaments, things like that. Our team did manage the releases that Carmela mentioned. We were the ones that would put the game in maintenance mode. We would make sure the patches got working and everything was going good, and then pass it on to QA so they can test it. More close to my job is we also track and analyze the metrics for all the titles, not only just Golf Challenge and Tiger Woods Online, but for other titles I'll mention here in a bit. So yeah, obviously our primary titles are Golf Challenge and Tiger Woods Online. So what the hell did I do all day? Spreadsheets. More spreadsheets. Finally, a lot more spreadsheets. And they just keep coming, and they never stop. So obviously, I did do a lot of spreadsheets, and they all belong to me apparently. My primary spreadsheet was the metrics report. Basically, it's a tabulation of all of our data for a particular day for all of our titles across the board. So I did reports for daily and weekly reports and various other reports. Like I compared Facebook data to how Facebook's giving us, oh, you made this much money. This is what we got for our money. How do they compare? Are they close? And I deliver these reports to actually pretty important people. I delivered them to the executive producers and senior producers, marketing and finance teams. They needed this data. They had to make design decisions. They had to make business decisions. They had to make marketing decisions based on this data. And it was vital that I got it out. And it took me a while to realize that. It's kind of not sexy sending out reports through email every day. But you gotta eventually, over time, you kind of learn that, hey, this is an important part of the process. And if they don't have these numbers, decisions don't get made. So this is actually a copy of the spreadsheet. I had to hide the data because I can't show you that, obviously. But you can kind of understand that, you can see we do a lot of stuff like week over week. How the game do this week compared to last week? How's it doing overall in the month? Obviously, you can track trends. I left that in there so you can kind of see that there are definitely trends. Stuff dips and dives, it goes up and down, and roller coasters. It's fantastic. So what the hell do I actually do? Basically what happens is I enter the data that was in there. Usually I get it from dashboards, which is direct telemetry from our games themselves. I also get it from MicroStrategy, which is our financing software, which basically is a clone of the data that usually is in our dashboard. But I also have to do queries. I have to add ad hoc queries. I actually have to do SQL through the database itself and pull out numbers sometimes. I also basically, once I get the numbers into the spreadsheet, I run fun create macros that organize it and format it so I can send it out to the EPs every day. I actually had to modify the spreadsheet, which you would think would be easy, but it's not. It was actually pretty complicated because I had to add NHL. We created a new title about October, and I had to spend almost 2 days trying to recreate the spreadsheet to add NHL because the macros are formatted very specifically. Everything's kind of very nerdy and Excel fun. This is the biggest part of my job, data validation. You've got a lot of data, and every day sometimes it changes. Sometimes it's off by $2,000, $3,000, and I have to make sure that it's not a technical issue or it's actually just a trend. So my job is to make sure that I have to go to the engineers and be like, hey, was there something wrong today? Did our servers go down for a little while? Why is this number off? Or is it just a trend? Did we add new marketing that pushed the numbers up? So data validation is extremely important. I think it's kind of like not really talked about a whole lot. Because really, how do you know these numbers are valid? You really don't. You assume they are, but somebody's got to make sure they actually are valid. And that was pretty much mostly my job, is to make sure that I had to talk to people, make sure stuff, hey, this is the right number. Streamlining the process. This is actually a pain in the ass. When I got there, I literally had to go through 5 senior producers to get one friggin' number. The Madden numbers were destroyed. You just switched from Madden 11 to Madden 12 Superstars, and I couldn't get the numbers to save my life. So I had to bug 5 producers. I'm a friggin' intern, and I'm bugging 5 senior producers who've got a lot more to do than give me numbers. So my job is to make sure that I didn't have to do that anymore. You don't want to bother them. They've got a lot to do. So yay, metrics, fun times. Obviously, I mentioned we do track titles for Madden, FIFA, NHL, World Series Superstars. Those are actually made by Playfish. They're fun to deal with if you ever get a chance to deal with them. They're actually based in London, so they don't have phones, so you can't call them. So we actually had people in Tiburon that directly work with them, so I didn't have to, but I had to work with people who are on our building that worked with Playfish, and they hated them, so we hate them, and everybody hates each other. So we get along somehow, in some weird way. And obviously, we also did metrics for Golf Challenge and Tiger Woods, which is the games we made in-house. So what do we track? Sales revenues, obviously money. That's important. Money's good. Daily active users is another one we do track. This is obviously very common. You see this everywhere. Something to note, though, is that daily active users actually have been changed in Facebook. They originally used to track a daily active user the minute you clicked on a game. That no longer is the case. A daily active user is tracked when you actually accept the would you like permission to play this game, or when you actually launch the game. So that actually changed our numbers significantly because we always assume that the minute you play the game, you're instantly a daily active user. But it's now no longer the case. But we do have this nice little stat called installs, which basically tell us, hey, how many players that day are playing for the very first time? How many players actually had to click accept to play this game? So it kind of gives you a basic understanding of, hey, how many people are we getting new per day? ARPU is an interesting number. Zynga will tell you they get 5 cents per user, which, based on my estimations, is actually probably pretty accurate. For example, Tiger Woods Online for us, we actually make 20 cents per user, but we are definitely a different user base. We have lower numbers of users, but we have really hardcore following. They spend like $200 on our games sometimes. So we have a very disproportionate ARPU, but it's definitely a good stat to have. Retention, people playing the game, are they coming back? How often do they come back? Do they come back monthly, weekly, daily? Very important stat to kind of track and see who keeps coming back. I dealt less with gameplay metrics. I was hoping I would actually get more chance to do so, but as Carmel alluded to, our games kind of went into coast mode, so I was not really out of the opportunity to track metrics there and see what we could change design-wise. That was definitely part of the job plan originally, at least, and it was definitely tracked. This is a copy of our weekly spreadsheet that I send out every week, obviously, and you can see it's got graphs in 3 colors and all that stuff. My other job, I didn't just do spreadsheets, I also did dashboard updates. I did a lot of stuff in the web using PHP and things like that, which was fun. So basically, I had to take those data as I was putting into the spreadsheet and get it into a dashboard so producers can read it and view it without having to bug me. This is actually not overly complicated. It was mostly just going into a PHP config file and adding a few variables and changing some arrays, setting different properties to add new charts and tables and things of that nature. I did have to work closely actually with people to get new chart types and things like that going. But most biggest part of that job is mostly just trying to figure out the SQL query. Database architecture is pretty complicated. 5 different games, 5 different tables. How the hell do I merge all 5 tables? Lots of joins, lots of unions, things like that. That's really the hardest part with that. This is a screenshot of our dashboard. I hid most of the numbers so you can't actually tell what they mean. But if you click on each individual dot, it'll give you a representation of how much money or whatever that day. You can choose what game or how long you want your filter to be. There's a lot of tools that go involved in making this. You think actually a web dashboard would be simple, but it's not. I use SQL, which is an SQL program that lets you basically, I can test my queries before I try putting them into the production. Perforce, obviously, we all use it here. We use it at EA as well. I gotta make sure I submit my code and stuff like that so it can go live. TAM test environment is actually interesting.
It's a lot like a LAMP server, which is basically just an Apache Linux, memcache, things like that. So it basically gives me the opportunity to test my dashboard changes locally before they go into production. I don't want to break anything. The dashboard itself, I never worked with pie charts and JS tables directly, but Ron actually has been working with us directly to kind of convert some of these things over, and we've now been using high charts and JS tables. So that's what our dashboards run off of. That's how we get the data in there and makes it look pretty. I use Notepad++, it's awesome. Pretty good for quickly editing PHP files. So my end game was to actually automate that spreadsheet. So basically, I've almost kind of negated myself as an employee. It was kind of strange. My job is to get to know the spreadsheet, but then make it so I don't have to know the spreadsheet anymore. But that was my task, and I did it. Basically, I have to take that I had to take the daily and weekly reports and get them onto the dashboard. To do this, I had to work with Playfish. Yay, Playfish. They were tough to work with, but they were awesome. They were able to give us a daily report automated out of their systems because they never liked sharing data with us. They hated it. They'd rather go to, I don't know, your grandmother's house and send data to us. They didn't like it. So we got automatic reports, and from there we had to get them. I had to create new tables and modify the telemetry database so that we could get those reports into our telemetry side so I can run queries off it and get it on the dashboard. So yeah, quite complex queries. Yay. At times. So obviously knowledge is half the battle. This is G.I. Joe, apparently. I did learn a lot of advanced MySQL queries. I mean, I'd done them before in the past, but nothing to this extent. Nothing with this real data before. I mean, an update query could blow up the entire database. Not cool. So I mean, it was real life pressure. The interesting part I think I learned the most is the processes behind tracking and storing telemetry. That was huge. And how do you do that? How does Zynga do it? I mean, just kind of understanding that process is really awesome. It's really cool. I obviously picked up more advanced Excel tricks, making me now like a master wizard in Excel, I guess. Like Carmel said, there's obviously need for constant communication. I had to talk to other teams, like, hey, sure, why is our data broken and stuff like that. Analyzing data. The biggest thing is, Rick will tell you, everybody in this faculty will tell you, it's a freaking business. I've seen the numbers, I know how much money these games make, I know how much money they don't make when things go down, I know how trends add new marketing, hey, good day, bad day. I also know that if games get cut, my team was disbanded, and I'm probably not getting an offer. So, I mean, it sucks, going into it that it's an option, but it happens. I can tell you for a fact it does happen, it will happen, and you just kind of have to work with it and kind of accept it. Skills needed, obviously this is a little bit different. Metrics, positions may change. Mine was more technical than anything else. So obviously I had to use SQL, PHP, and all that good stuff. Understanding databases was huge. I was an IT background, so I kind of picked up a lot of this stuff in Excel. Most people don't know Excel, but it's awesome. I love it. Because I'm a spreadsheet geek. Any questions? I know I threw a lot of spreadsheet craziness at you people. I'm crazy. Guards have to test for that. I think it's that next. Thank you,
Alright, well, I'm Zach Hillsbury. I am a software engineer intern on MBA. Oh, wow, my mouse is going the same. Cool. See, it's not just me. Okay, yay. Alright, so yeah. So I got hired on the gameplay pod, and my big task was working on the AI system. I was basically the Padawan for their chief AI engineer, who actually came down from EA Canada with the game to help make this thing better. So, how many people know about the whole fiasco that happened with NBA Elite? Okay.
Ron, it's the game. You want to play.
Alright, so basically what happened is the Vancouver studio for EA Canada, was responsible for making the NBA games, NBA Live, since way back when. And so when NBA Elite 11 came around, things didn't go quite so well, and the game actually got shelved before actually releasing. They had it all ready to go, ready to be sold, and they decided this isn't a good enough game, we're going to put it away and not ship it. Then they decided, hey, we're going to make Tiburon in charge of actually making a basketball game. So what we've been working on is trying to fix the mess. It's been interesting to dig through the code that they've already got there. Things are just all over the place, and especially on the AI side, it needs a lot of work. So my job has basically been to try to overhaul the fundamental layout for the different AI pieces. So the logic for the different player behaviors, shooting the ball, trying to steal, block. Okay, I'm just gonna put that down. Yeah, the logic is just all over the place. I think one of the ones I had to deal with, there were different key pieces of logic in 4 or 5 different locations. So my old job was to basically get these all together in one location so that when the product owners for those particular features needed to make changes, try to update it, they only had to go to one spot instead of hunting all over the code base.
think we'll go this way.
My mouse going back. The mouse does work. I got it.
Okay.
So, okay, but yeah, so, and just with all the different optimizations, getting things down into one place, I was able to also kind of improve some of the lower level stuff with our animation system. There's some data assistants in there that really, really slow down the game. So I was in charge of, trying to pull these out as much as I can, trying to help the game run a lot faster. And then just through all the different parts, I think I probably touched on probably 60 or 70% of the code base as I was digging through, just going through all the different areas of the game. So I had to do a ton of investigation, document where I've been, what I'm fixing, what's going on, and then actually make the repairs. And then in addition to those tasks, I also got to play around in other different areas. One cool thing about working at EA, if there's something you want to try to do, just tell your manager, tell somebody. They're always looking for people to help out in different areas. I know with mine, I didn't want to be just AI. I wanted to check out how animation worked, how tools worked. And so I got to play around with a whole bunch of different things. So one of the things I got to play with was the play building tool. We had a tool that's getting a little old, needed some new features. So I got to go in, come up with some ideas, talk to designers, figure out, what's going to be helpful, what's going to help you make plays better. And then, went through, added those things in, and got to have some fun with it. Also, for animation, we had a whole secondary animation system. So, when the artists are going through, they'll do, primary animations with the rig, all the general stuff. There's also a second layer of animation that can be put on that for the more subtle things, as far as like muscle flexing, facial pleats, stuff like that. So I got a new system that we have for that actually tied into our whole game structure. And then also workflow assistance tools. So these were just fun little things. I actually made a couple Windows gadgets. That's actually a really fun little platform to work with. It's like making little mini web pages you can just drop on your desktop wherever. And they were simple, quick. Like one of them took maybe a week to do. But even those little tools, that particular tool has probably saved my team, I don't know, in the past month, probably a good 50 to 60 man hours, just not wasting time. So anything you can do to help your team, even the little stuff, it makes a huge difference when you're on a development team of 20, 30, 40 people. And what I've learned, accountability is definitely critical. As I've seen with the whole code base that we got from Elite, nobody's going to clean up your mess for you. I mean, if you're going to go do whatever you want for the code, nobody's falling behind you. What you do is your responsibility. So try to do it right the first time. And then definitely do not be afraid to ask questions. I've learned so much from everybody on my team. I've got engineers on my team who have been in EA for 10 plus years, and talking to them, I'm always learning new stuff every single conversation. And they're always so willing to help. They're really, really open. We play basketball, twice a week. I started posting up on my creative director yesterday, and he went through having with me, kind of got a couple hook shots on him. And then, so comments, documentations, wikis, there's information everywhere. EA has a whole infrastructure on stuff for, just so new people can get on board, figure out what's going on with a project or a new section. And so you really need to make sure whenever you're making changes or adding new features that you're adding to the documentation, adding to the wikis. That way, if anybody has to come take over for you, actually get me. I got another FIEA guy, Larson's taking my spot on the team, and I'm going to be showing him the ropes on what I've been doing and showing him documentation I've written just to try to get him ramped up. And that stuff happens all the time in the industry. You get to a new project, you get to a new pod. People have to know where you were, what you were doing, and be able to pick up the slack really, really quickly. So this stuff is absolutely key. All right, any questions?
Thank you, spreadsheet.
We got one.
I did spreadsheets.
You got a question?
You got a question?
All right.
Yeah, one question. So about what percentage would you estimate the Tiburon team is involved with the code base from what was delivered from EAC?
I don't know how much.
Is it 25? Is it 75?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to comment on that.
Okay. It's okay.
All right, anything else? All right, another MBA guy.
Let's configure our computer.
All right, well, fine, be that way with my mouse.
Yeah, kind of works like not the slide right here.
All right, so I'm David Ackerman. I am on the rendering and graphics team. I'm a software engineer on MBA as well. Just waiting for the faculty. I know Paul knows a lot of these guys from Superman. So this is just sort of the team I work with, and something interesting, like the red ones are the software engineers, This guy's our manager, and Gracie right here, everyone past her, they all came onto the team after I did. So our team pretty much doubled in the past 3 months. And the rest of the guys are all artists and tech artists. And so what I did, so the first task they gave me to do was some live authoring stuff between like the runtime, and we have this asset management tool called Game Changer. And so the thing they had me do was like when you clicked on an object in the runtime, it would navigate to that texture in the management tool. And then after that, they had me do some shaders. I did a bloom shader as well as a depth of field shader, and I ported that one from Madden. And then the big thing that was actually supposed to take up my entire internship was they had me design and implement the whole swap part system. And so that's like getting wristbands on the players, all of the like headbands, wristbands, jerseys, and things like that. So I got to be on that from start to finish. And I'm pretty much done with that now. I got to get some extra things in. So the one thing I just finished up, which I think was really cool, is called this thing of team colors. And so what they did, one of the tech artists, he wrote a shader for the, right now it's just for the shoes, but it's gonna be for all the gear. And it will apply the team colors to it, so you don't have to do it for every single team. And so he wrote that, and I had to hook it up in the runtime. So now every time, for every team and for every different uniform, you have like home, away, classic, it'll change your shoe color. And so this week, I'm starting my next big task, which is going to take me probably a good 2-3 months. And it's a clock sim, and I think it's really big, and I have no idea how to do it. So good luck to me. Some of the things I learned, they're very strict on coding standards. They have these 2 pages up, and you're supposed to follow them to a T. And one thing that I found really useful is every time that you need to submit something, it has to go through a code review through one of your leads, and then they like correct you and say, okay, like even if it's just like, if you have an acronym and you need to like lowercase some of the letters if it's greater than 3 letters long or something like that. And one thing that they said I did a good job on was a lot of the problems I had, I tried to work through them, and then I had like a specific problem that I couldn't figure out, and then they were able to say, oh, okay, this is how you do that. This is just something that we know because we've worked with it, and they gave me like 1 line and it worked magically. And Handsoft's very, very useful. I don't know if it's like this for all the teams, but like the managers and everyone, they're very strict on Handsoft, and like they'll scold you if you don't update it every single day. And the builds take forever. I hate it when I have to do a clean build because that takes at least 10 minutes. I know it's longer for some of the other platforms, and then you have to test it on PC, Xbox, and PS3. And I was actually surprised about how many hacks there were in the code. I think this is probably maybe NBA specific because like we're trying to redo everything. They actually have like this macro that's called like EA to do, and like you're supposed to comment that every single time you put a hack in. And I see those all over the place. And so some bad experiences I actually had there. There was a period of, they moved us down from the 6th floor to the 3rd. And after, I guess something happened to my computer, and for about 4 days, my computer would shut off after like every hour. And I would lose all my work. So they couldn't figure out what it was, so they like checked my outlets and everything, and eventually they just ended up replacing my entire computer. And then just recently, I was syncing a Perforce, and I got this message that says, you are out of hard drive space. What? I never had that before, so I had an issue I had to deal with that and just clear up some stuff, and he's like, okay, only build for like specific builds, because like for every platform there's also like release, debug, and final. So he's like, okay, only do it on 3, 1 for each platform to save space, and then when I get on full time, they'll give me a bigger hard drive. And also, IntelliSense is terrible. On 2008, I finally, after about two-thirds of the way through my internship, I was like, I can't take this anymore. So I asked IT for a visual assist license, and I think one part that's really terrible about IntelliSense is our code base is so large that IntelliSense takes about like 5 hours to completely parse every single file in our code base, and that's not cool. So some of the good things, I feel like I have a good advantage with a very good seat. I'm in, it's kind of like a cubicle like they have here at FIEA. A lot of people, they have sort of their own isolated cube. But with me, like my 2 leads are pretty much right behind me and right next to me. So whenever I need something, I can just turn around and ask them stuff. And I was also able to get a lot of extra work done during my internship. So like I said, they originally had just that live authoring and the swap part stuff. And so they put on like the team colors and the shaders. They give us a lot of free things, and not just, and a lot of this is NBA specific too. Like they give us this awesome shirt that I'm wearing, which I don't think you can get anywhere. And they give us another shirt, and I think one of the guys, they gave us a downloadable code for NBA Jam Hardened Edition. So like, oh, awesome. And flexible hours is always nice, and I don't even know what time I come in. Sometimes it's 9 o'clock, sometimes it's 10:30. And so how FIEA related to all of this, I think Perforce really helped that I knew that. I know some of the new guys that came in after me, they broke the build sometimes because they didn't know how to use Perforce correctly. And I was one of the people that used UDK, and so I use none of that right now. I'm using C# and I'm working on tools and a lot of C++, and I'm working on the runtime. And so all that stuff in Prog 2 really helped out. I feel like I'm ready for that. I mentioned the code base before. It's a lot bigger than what I'm used to, just with that whole, even compiling IntelliSense, it's terrible. I really like that whole code review things, that you have to go through your leads to be able to submit something so they know it's good. And just the importance of Handsoft. I know as part of Nexus we didn't use Handsoft too much, but we use it religiously there. And so, somehow me and Joe found the same picture. But I think my best moment was I was showing, I have these meetings every other week with my manager, and so I was showing some stuff in my swap part things, and he told me, he's like, okay, you're almost done with your first feature in this game. I'm like, oh, really? That's awesome. And it's actually going to be highly used in it. So, glad about that.
All right, so I'm the first football guy. You can clap. It's okay.
We're talking for David, just
yeah. All right, so what I did. The things I'm going to talk about are some of the tasks that I work on, and pretty much the experience that I gained from being an intern at EA. So my first task, the Central football, they do like they do the centralized gameplay for both of the games. So I know that they were talking about build times. Like I had 4 configurations because there were specific NCAA and Madden, and then there were specific gameplay or central gameplay ones. So the first task I worked on was actually using all 4 of those, which was awesome because I had to build, and I think my worst build was 6 hours, which I just left overnight. But what I had to do was remove some of the compile time features and turn them into runtime features, which is extremely important because, like I said, having to build these configurations every time takes a hell of a long time. So not having to build every time you want to change, oh, I want to use this feature, oh, I want to use that feature, you just change a file that says, okay, use it, as opposed to having to build. Something I learned from that is with the long build times, you got to learn to multitask better. So instead of just, okay, I'm going to build everything for 6 hours and twiddle my thumbs like an asshole. Instead, maybe build one, do a little bit more code. Build another one, and do it like incrementally and not having to waste too much time. And definitely using the fact that, oh, I'm going to leave at 6, so I'm just going to go ahead and build everything. And the code size, I feel like it's a fist fight to get memory. So it was I had to track the amount of memory that was being impacted with the features that were going to be permanently in there. And then if they weren't going to be used, making sure that they weren't destroying the amount of memory that was being used, because it is a fist fight. If someone says I found a meg, someone's going to get a black eye. The second thing I worked on was an animation tracker, and I'm still working on this, little parts of it. It's the animation system was updated, and they're not using the standard EA stuff, so they're moving towards that, but they don't currently track it, so I was basically in charge of getting those new animations tracked, which is important because underused memory, or like I said up here, if it's underused, like animations that are underused that are just never used, then that could possibly be free memory, which means happy times. And I also had to update the animation tool, which is a love-hate relationship. And I had to update that to, just export some extra information that I was going to be using. My third task, they're features in the game, which means I've done something that people are going to play. I can't talk about it, but when you play the game, you'll know. So something that differed from FIEA, legit deadlines for capstone. Yeah, I'll do it this Thursday. I'll get it done before Monday, before Tuesday's presentation. It'll be in, whatever. Okay, maybe it's the morning up. I'll get it done. No, here it's like, okay, here's your deadline. You don't have it. All right, we're going to move it off from your sprint. Or if you don't have enough time left, we're going to move it off, put it on the next sprint or something. So the first couple of tasks that I did didn't really have hard deadlines. They were more of just intern tasks. But the features were like hardcore hand-softed. And it was cool because I got to work with designers that were awesome. And there's actually a ton of fine-ins there, in case you didn't know.
Like 44 right now.
Yeah, like I think in the old aisle I was sitting in, 6 out of 8 of us were fine-ins, including Steve. So the experience that I think is extremely important is the first large code base, which means there's a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to know any of it to start, obviously. So it's fun / challenging to try to understand certain systems that you're going to be messing around with, and obviously if you don't, you're obviously not going to know everything, but try to figure stuff out. But once you hit to a roadblock, you got to ask. And the thing that I found consistently awesome is every time I did have a question, I would ask either my leader or team member, which was actually pretty cool because you just send an email out, and then 5 minutes later someone will reply like, oh, do this, or oh, do that. Or someone else will say, oh, I'm going to include this guy because he knows how to do it. So someone knows how to do what you want to do, which is awesome because you don't ever get stuck in a rut. Stability. So for the first 5 weeks of my internship, the Perforce depot was frozen. And what that means is I can't submit anything to Perforce. And when you're changing a lot of files, like 100 and something, and you want to submit, and then a month goes by, fun times. Half the files get deleted, there's new files you got to update, and so stability is definitely an important thing, and I know that in our capstones, we weren't really as hardcore about it, but it's important to always have at least code over here that works. When this works, copy it over, keep it over there for your presentation on Tuesday because you know that stuff you're working on Tuesday morning is not going to work. Again, build times, learn to multitask. Documentation is important. I'm sure everyone's already said why. So the second thing that I thought was pretty awesome, in-house tools. They have tools up the ass, and it is awesome because they make life so much easier. They have stuff that, like, okay, you just push this button, and it's going to take care of everything for you. It's going to submit to Perforce, it's going to do the comments, you got it. They got macros for everything, it's awesome. So one of the things I have to work with is a live attribute tweaker. And I know Paul's very, very into these things. And let me tell you, it's pretty awesome when you can just run the game and you give this to the producer, and he literally just changes the values without you ever having to touch it again. And it's pretty legit. In-game cheats, I know something that Ron likes, especially for RPP, even though that's kind of over. But for your capstones, it's kind of important, like, make sure that the player's going to catch the ball every single time. Damn it, this guy sucks. He keeps missing it. Okay, just turn it on. So that's something important. And they have a custom compiler. Again, love-hate relationship, because it disables IntelliSense, which it sucks. And it's lame because normally every time you update from Perforce, you have to rebuild the solution, and Visual Assist, if you're not using it, shame on you. But it has to parse through everything every single time you regenerate the solution, so it kind of sucks. But it's so nice to just push one button and it builds everything for you overnight. It definitely makes the workflow more efficient, and it is automation at its best, because automation is awesome, it's awesome, it's awesome, also it's awesome. And the processes for code reviews, it's great because you might accidentally forget a line that prints out debug information that only you needed to know. And so when you do a code review, it's like, oh, what the hell's that? Or if it's an illegitimate, like, that's going to crash the game, you know that, right? We worked in sprints, which were 13-day sprints, which did involve planning, task breakdowns, and the time estimates. Time estimates were a little iffy. Joe's formula was probably nice. Task breakdowns are important because it's a good way for going from the design to saying, this is how I'm going to do it. And that way you don't get like overscheduled for sprints and stuff. The technical design documents, it's basically understanding what the producer wants or the designer wants, and making sure that what you build is actually what they wanted. And if you break the build, it'll happen, and they're going to point the finger at you. And in some cases, they'll give you a chicken. Some cases, you have to buy donuts. And in some cases, they just say, can you please fix it? So stability is everything. Without stability, you have nothing. And that's 5 weeks without Perforce. God damn it. So just remember for capstones, stability. Oh, also I learned some stuff about football. Oh yeah, I'm not really a football fan. I don't know anything about football, so I've actually learned some stuff. And if you do want to work for gameplay on football, know the game of football. Any questions? No, good.
For Steve. Yes.
So I'm going to try not to get you guys too excited, but the next slide is really amazing. So there's like fast action cuts, and it's crazy. Don't miss it.
It's not spreadsheets.
It's text. So kind of like Carlo, I was on the core gameplay team for football. So I had a lot of these same experiences as him in terms of we had a 5-week lockout on our Perforce, which really sucked, to say the least. Carlo summed it up pretty well. But in that, I had my first task, which was supposed to be a simple plugin change. At least that's what I thought. I'm thinking this is going to be a good first task. I get to delete a DLL, put another DLL in its place, and easy peasy lemon squeezy. No. So what they didn't tell me was that this plugin was used everywhere in their code, and it was heavily embedded in legacy code, new code, and just about everything that they did, because it was basically everything that controlled their IK systems. So the first thing I had to do was a lot of ramp up, and it was a good task for that because I was changing so much different areas of code that it helped me actually learn the code base really well. Not at a really in-depth level, but it got me in different areas of the code base, and I knew where to look for stuff later on when I was working on some of my other tasks. The reason why this task took so long was it actually took probably about a week to implement, but with the Perforce lockout, that extended to about 6 weeks. and it took a lot of testing and benchmarking because the new plugin was so new. There was a lot of risk involved with switching over to it. The producers and the bigwigs and stuff, they wanted to know that it was going to work and it was going to be better, faster, cheaper, stronger, I don't know. So they basically had me testing that for 3 weeks, and after the 5-week lockout, I got to do it all again. Because by then the code had changed so much that none of that testing was valid anymore. So that was fun, but getting through that, I think, was an amazing experience to be finally done with it, and on to my next task. So my second task was working on a simple C# tool. We talked a little bit about, they give you ownership over stuff, and literally they just handed me the tool and said, go. They didn't tell me what they wanted me to do with it, they just said make it better. So I took that opportunity, and I asked around, I talked to designers, I talked to producers, and basically any stakeholder that will be using the tool. And I found out what's good about it, what sucks about it, how does it work, how can I make it better, and I did that. And it was a lot of fun because there wasn't as much pressure as the first task. There was literally no possibility of breaking the game itself. So if you did break it, nobody really found out about it until they tried to use the tool. So that felt pretty good, and having that freedom was nice too, to know that they trust you with something like that, and you get to take ownership over something and carry it on your back and call it yours. So that leads me into some of the changes that I made. Nothing really too serious. I changed a lot of the workflow, added some Perforce integration. I basically just did a lot of stuff to make it more usable, maintainable, and stable. So designers are always appreciative when you come to them and say, I thought of this new feature that this tool could use, and they hadn't even thought of it themselves. They're always appreciative when you want to add stuff like that on your own, so they're not going to stop you. So I went ahead and I took that to the fullest and did what I could. My third task, can't talk about in too much detail, unfortunately, but it is really awesome, and it's been really fun working on it. And it involves a lot of new technology. Working on the core gameplay team, a lot of the times you really don't get that because a lot of the things that you're going to be working on is going to be tweaking stuff that's already in the game. Making hook zones work better, making pass swapping and stuff like that feel right. And so when I got a task like this on the core gameplay team, it was really different than anything they usually get to work on. So it was a lot different of an experience from the other two. So basically on this task, it's just me and 2 other designers that are both FIENs. So that was really cool, just to be able to work with a couple other guys, that have gone through the same things that you have and gone through the same experiences, and you really get to give your feedback. I thought as an engineer at EA, I was just going to be kind of a code monkey, tell me what to do, jump through a hoop, but it's really not like that. I got to give a lot of feedback into the feature. If I said something sucked, then the designers will actually change it. It makes you feel like you have a little bit of power, but not really. I guess the upside of that is obviously you get to take ownership over it. The downside is if it sucks, everybody points a finger at you and laughs. So that's kind of been my experience at EA. I didn't want to really drag it on too long because I'm sure you guys have a good idea of what it's like to work at EA by now. Any questions? Cool.
All right, I am a designer, producer on Madden, and a little bit of background. I played college football, and I thought that's why I got the internship. But the guys that I'm working with didn't know that I played football, so my first day on the job was like, so how much do you know about football? Probably more than you do. But, and then ironically, I don't have anything to do with gameplay on football, so all of my knowledge kind of gets wasted. But also, I did not want to take the internship. It was not something that was appealing to me. EA was never my dream job, but being there has been an interesting experience. And a lot of the reasons why I didn't want to go there, they don't really exist. A lot of it's fabricated. EA has that image of being the evil corporation. The corporation is evil, yes, but the people that work there are not. So, a little bit about what I did. When I got there, my 5 intern tasks, I got them done in the first week because they apparently underestimate what FIEA designers can do. And it was a lot of spreadsheets like what Bertino showed. But knowledge of Excel that can automate a lot of the spreadsheet tasks got things done really quick. So I ended up, they put me on a task for this in-game story system that was on the chopping block, and they had a week before the creative pitch. So I was able to design this story system that ended up saving the mode. We're doing a new mode for Madden 13 that I can't talk too much about, but it was on the chopping block. This was the creative director's final pitch to get it approved by corporate, and without the information and the design from that I got to work on, it would have got cut. So they were pretty thankful for that. And I ended up being transitioned to more of a tool and systems designer, which anybody who worked with me during FIEA probably thinks that's hilarious because I don't know anything about code or anything at all. But having a logical brain helps. And really the master plan is just to make my job easier. They're moving towards a designer-centric culture, at least on the Madden team. So they want to get away from engineers having to hard code things because engineer time is precious and expensive, and us designers are a dime a dozen, super cheap. They'll hire 85 of us instead of hiring one more engineer. So the, not really, but the, some of the stuff that I got to work on has already been implemented directly into the engine, which is pretty cool to be sitting next to lead engineer and telling him that he's doing something wrong. It wasn't how I wanted it, but so I've kind of bounced around a little bit. We're doing a brand new commentary system, so I designed all the logic for how the commentary is going to work. Because if anybody played Madden 12, the commentary was horrible. You could hear the stitching. A lot of it was because they recorded multiple sessions and they never got the 2 guys recording together. We have a brand new team this year of people of the, it's for those of you who watch football, Jim Nance and Phil Sims are going to be doing the commentary, and they're partners on CBS. They're awesome. They're rock stars to work with. But the process that we had in place for recording voiceovers in the past was horrible. Like the design on how we recorded voiceovers probably contained less information than this slide did. So when you have somebody that's trying to go talk to these guys that are uber professionals, very expensive, and don't have a lot of free time to waste around, having a good plan was key. So our new logic system is going to help with that a lot. We've been able to, we already have more capability at this stage in the game than we did for all of Madden 12. And really that's been the key thing here, is working smart, not hard. So I'm trying to push everything away from manual work to be data-driven. So at some level, I'm kind of eliminating my job, but at the same level, there's always things that can be data-driven. We track so much information at EA. There's no reason not to use it. But my first day, I was sitting in a meeting with the creative director, and they're talking about, well, I wonder how many people do this, or I wonder how many people do that. Well, we have a dashboard that will tell us exactly how many people do that. And it's like they didn't know where the link was for the dashboard. So it's stuff like that that can be if you think data-driven as a designer, you're going to do well there because it's very valuable. Anybody can sit and pump out content, which is what initially my job was supposed to be, but that's so boring. Oh my gosh. And that brings me to this point here. I've been named the feature lead for this new feature that I can't talk about, but I have the EA liaison to a major social media company that we're working with. So now you have like a 50% chance of guessing who that is. But so that's a partnership that I've been able to be on multiple conference calls with and design the whole feature and work with them. And it's interesting. This is where I get to use a little bit of my undergrad. I was a business student, and I don't have to have a business rep in the room with me when I'm talking because they trusted me enough to just be in there and handle the conversations. But we understand that they have things that they want. They don't understand Madden's needs. We have things that we want, and we don't understand their needs and what's possible from a technical thing. And EA has a tendency of trying to throw its weight around. It's like, hey, we're EA. This is how we want it. The problem is, social media companies are dealing with mobile developers who get 45 million players, and we're talking about 7 million players. So we don't have as much weight to throw around in this battle as we would like to think we have. And so communicating with these, I think I got to talk to the vice president and the chief technical officer of this company, and that was pretty cool. It's a pretty cool feature, pretty cool thing to do. And then spreadsheets like a boss. Lots and lots of spreadsheets. The life of a designer, there will be lots of spreadsheets. So we've all talked about ownership. It's really, really important to understand that when you take a job at EA, they're going to give you a task, and they're going to just kind of sit you at your desk and let you come up with whatever you come up with. They don't hold your hand, and that's one of my big fears going to EA was, I'm going to sit there, I'm just going to do what someone else tells me to do, and I'm going to waste away in my chair. And that's not how it is at all. So that was strike one of my fears of going to EA, crossed off the table. Well, actually, on that same note, though, the problem with the ownership, at least for me, is that if I see somebody else screwing up somewhere else, the attitude is, that's not your problem, don't worry about it. And that kills me because like there's something that's obviously can be fixed pretty quickly, but that's not your area. You don't got to worry about it. Someone else will take care of it. And I think some of that may come from just being there a long time, but that's like an attitude that at a smaller company or at FIEA, like if you have that attitude, it's like, well, the designer didn't do his job, whatever, and you're an artist or a programmer, then you're not doing FIEA right. But communication is key, and this is something that we've all talked about, but you know, I have a manager, and then there's the HR pod manager, and then there's the creative director, and then there's a project lead, and then there's the business unit lead. There's all these different areas that you have to go through to get a decision made, and it's like trying to turn a ship. You know, if there's a different route that needs to happen, it's very difficult to course correct quickly. And we've encountered that several times already because of assumptions that we made that weren't smart. And for those of you that don't know, Madden's kind of the redheaded stepchild because NCAA comes out first, so they get the tech needs. And we kind of relied on a system this year that is being implemented in NCAA, but we don't have time to do it because they get the dev resources, which is fine, but our leads kind of assumed that we were just going to get it, so now we're scrambling to pick it back up. And all that comes from somebody not sending an email to ask, hey, can we get this? And that's caused like a lot of issues now. So even in Capstone, communicate, really, it'll make a big difference. The pace at EA is significantly slower than what it was at FIEA. And that may just have been because of, well, it may be on a person-by-person basis, but I'm finding that I have a lot more idle time. And it's weird because I'm not sure how to deal with it. At FIEA, it was go, 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 there's always something to do. But like Friday, I couldn't get any work done because I was waiting on database access from an engineer who was in an NBA Jam tournament. And so I wasn't able to get any work done on Friday. And that's weird for me. Some other guys be like, yeah, I'm get to collect my paycheck to work at EA, you know, just sit here and play on Facebook. Well, that's just, if that's your motive, if that's why you wanted to get in the game industry, that's fine. But that's not why I was here. All told, as I said at the beginning, EA is not where I wanted to go. There's still some things about it that, and to be fair, I haven't put anything in here or won't say anything that I didn't already clear with my managers, but EA is a great place to work if you are interested in getting good pay, good benefits, and it's a good environment. But if you're looking for like a lot of responsibility and more creative freedom and an opportunity to like just be something bigger than a cog in the machine, then EA is probably not the place for you. But I have a hard time working 8 hours and then shutting my brain off to what I was doing. And that's difficult because everyone else there kind of has that attitude, which is fine. It becomes a job. And a job in the game industry is still awesome, but it's just maybe not quite what you're looking for. And if that's the case, they pay good on the internship, take it. There's other options. EA looks great on the resume. They offered me a full-time position, and I'm going to take it because it's still a great opportunity. But it is a stepping stone for a lot of people. Since I've been there, on my pod, which is 6 people, 3 people have moved on to Visceral or EA Canada or Redwood Shores. So there's a lot of opportunity for horizontal movement. And EA owns BioWare and it owns Mythic. And EA is a great Tiburon is a great stepping point if you're looking to get somewhere else. So don't just completely disregard it because it's sports games. That was it.
Okay, I'll try and keep this one short. I'm going to steal Joe's dirt for things that I can't talk about because I worked on a lot of dirt. What I did, I started off as a technical artist for Madden, which is an essential art group that they had there. My primary, what they had me working on was tool improvements and updates. The first thing that they had me do was update one of their largest tools for 64-bit conversion, and I later learned that none of the current TAs would touch it with a 10-foot pole, and they were all secretly laughing at me behind my back, but I managed to get through it. Other things that I worked on were shader changes for player jerseys, and I work on a lot of outsourcing setup, tools management, workforce setup, TA support for currently NCAA, and then a derp title that I can't talk about. Being able to jump into a new solution when something that you're working on does not work is a great skill to have. Plan B, you kind of have to live by plan B, because there's always going to be a better way to do it, or something's going to happen where you have to make a completely new plan and try to figure something else out. So being agile on your feet is a very good thing to have. Better to ask questions than be stubborn and wrong. You're going to go in there and it's going to be mountains and mountains of information that is either poorly documented or severely outdated. So being able to ask questions and not being afraid to ask questions is going to really help you. Your mentors, they're not going to let you drown. I mean, if you need help, they're going to be there for you, and they'll really kind of be your biggest cheerleaders. And people who don't comment code, there's a special circle in hell for them. And when dealing with tools, one of the tools that I worked on was 29 files, give or take, it well over 1,000 lines each, and maybe 20 lines of comments. It was horrific. So as you're working on stuff, please document all the things, because someone is always going to have to work on that thing after you. So don't be a jerk. And were there any questions or anything? I know most of what I do I can't talk about, but TAs in general, no?
Right, so I didn't do what did I learn? So really quickly, don't break the build. You get a chicken, got it twice, it sucks. They tell you to submit in pieces, but they don't tell you, hey, automation only takes the first piece, not all your submissions. So of course it all breaks. Then you get a nice chicken on your desk. I don't hold the record for interns, so I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, so I guess at first they didn't think 5 programmers could program, so they gave me really easy bug fixes that they thought would take me 2 weeks. Yeah, first bug fix was to create a new goal. They had like a goal for you can make a custom conference with 4 teams and they give you a goal, hey, finish 6. It's like, why would you finish 6? There's only 4 teams. But to make a new goal, say, hey, finish 4th if you have 4 teams in your conference. So that's what the pictures show. It was really quick, really fast. They were blown away that something that they thought took 2 weeks took me 3 days. Second thing was that someone didn't know how to delete the string in C++ for some reason. So that was my next task was, hey, delete this string. So the problem was that on the left screen, they were saying, hey, let's be smart and reuse this variable, and then let's not delete it. So we're going to have quarterback stats for running backs. That's awesome. So my task was to, hey, delete it. So on the right screen, you can see that there's no strings for some of those players. So that was like the first 2 weeks. Then I did something really cool that I can't even talk about, but I did some web support. I had no idea Linux, VMs, any of that stuff. It was just, hey, here, do this. I work on NCAA Online Dynasty, so I figured, hey, online stuff's gonna have to come soon, and it came with its fury and vengeance, and it took forever. Like everyone said, code base is huge. One person makes a change, you need to integrate it into your stuff and then retest it all over again. And I want to be an MBA, it takes 10 minutes, it takes like 40 minutes for a clean build. And then you have to deploy to the web, which is a different step completely different. So double that, let's say, probably 2 hours. Something completely new. I'm glad it happened. I learned some Linux stuff that I can't even talk about. So this was my primary task, was to create a Dynasty AutoSim. So for NCAA, we have a PC build for dev, because kits are like rare, super rare dev kits for NCAA. It's like you get one, hey, you must be somebody. So pretty much the first task was designers would have to sim through a season. As you can see, that would take 5 hours for 10 years. And they would literally have nothing to do on the dev kits for 5 hours. So my task was to do it on the PC, and that cut the time by half, pretty much. So designers wanted to do this because they had different points throughout the season where they dumped data and they made pretty XML spreadsheets or whatever they do. Yeah, so I had to pretty much create the system to be able to dump the data they wanted. Some of the examples there are like coach goals, transfers, team stats, stuff that they need for the dynasty. So I did that. That's what I did. They had this cool automation system where they set it all up. So second part of my task was to tie into that automation system. So you pretty much click a button and hey, you have 60 years worth of data for all you want, so they can make spreadsheets. So this is pretty much how it works. We have this cool thing, reveal, that I can't talk about, which is a dev option. Press some secret key on the controller and hey, this menu pops up. And then you would be able to, the designers would actually be able to click which options they'd want to dump for how many years. And then I made that pretty little UI on the bottom, which was awesome in the game. I think that's pretty much all I have. I'm working on something that I can't talk about, so I didn't even put it in the slides. But it's a good feeling to know that I'm going to have 2-3 screens in the game, and it's going to ship with what I did. So when you play the game, you're going to be looking at my stuff. Oh, last step, which I didn't even get to because IT is horrible. We put in a PC. We want to make a PC farm so we can dump all this data, without anyone having to deal with it. We ordered 10 PCs when I started. I'm ending and they're not even there. So insert picture whenever I get the picture, I'll put it. So questions?
At EA, do they send out like company emails to you guys when fresh coffee's ready?
No, but is the coffee ready here? Because I need to know.
All right, howdy everybody. I'm Jared, that's Parag, he's the guy. I'm sure you guys are all riveted, so I'm going to try to make this quick and relatively painless. We're both on Central Football Graphics. What is Central Football Graphics? So basically it's a centralized team that's responsible for handling the rendering system, which is made with software engineers like myself do, and the asset pipeline, which regular TAs have to mess with. And they're responsible for both Madden and NCAA for all the platforms. Currently it's 360, PS3, PC, and it will change in the future. Basically, we're responsible for creating stuff that looks pretty, or trying to all the visual improvements. Any new technology gets to go through us first. So we create the base that the teams can use afterwards. So going into specifics, I have to be very careful what I say on this first task. I was approved to say it. I prototyped a new dynamic skylighting model because that was a feature that the team wants to have in. It involves using normal map clouds. It has been greenlit and will be used in multiple titles. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed it. The next task is actually the first task they wanted to assign me in my internship. It was on the PC build involving losing the rendering device. They said, okay, this is an easy task. It should only take them about 2 weeks. I'm at the end of my internship and I've only made a dent in it. Turns out working on this bug has uncovered so many issues that a largely console-based game doesn't even think about, but PC games have to take care of all the time. So I've been struggling with that, finding things that are wrong with the system, talking to my leads and having them laugh and say, I'm sorry. The only other task I had, I was supposed to act as support for TAs like Rock and Mary. Sorry.
It's actually kind of funny because we had a big meeting with all our supervisors and our bosses, and as they were reading through the meeting, they were reading through a list of people for TAs to go to for support, and they were going over all the senior engineers, and they're like, and Jared Dunn, you're going to ask him all the questions that you have first before you go to anybody else. So all of the TAs who had any issue, we went straight to Jared for every single TA problem that we had before we went to anybody else.
Thank goodness that didn't happen a lot, because usually I was like, go talk with this guy. So I guess I was just to keep them from bugging them directly and having to waste their time. I don't know. One of the tasks that I've been working on that they actually just got, like Carla was mentioning, memory. Everyone loves memory, and there's never enough of it. So my job now is to try and find memory somewhere in the magical world of Madden and NCAA. Just somewhere. Find a meg and a half, please, and get it done in a week. So I'm hunting for memory, and it's about as fun as it sounds. What did I learn? So, we're working with low-level systems. You need to be efficient. Rendering engine, pretty basic. Everybody uses it. To harp on this fact, everybody's talking about code reviews. Well, changing low-level systems, I have an additional code review that I had to go through, where I had to email a steering committee of people from the United States, Canada, and Europe to have my changes put in the system. And they did scrutinize it, and yeah, you need to be efficient when working with something that a lot of teams are going to use. Trying to convert a game that has been on consoles for its entire existence into a PC build is fun. Some things work pretty nicely, others, huge issues, namely the device rendering lost bug. So it hurts. So if you want to eventually make that jump, design smart. Finally, like everyone else has said, and everyone has talked about communication, it's key, especially when you're dealing with supervisors, art directors, senior artists, on working on what they want to have as their vision in a product. So communicate, 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 communicate. Any questions? Cool, here's Barak.
Hey guys, I'm Barak. I'm a tech artist over at Central Football Graphics as well. And the main thing, I think I'm the only one there right now in that department as one senior, but our main goal is to pretty much make sure that every good-looking thing that the engineers are doing and that the artists are doing that's brand new gets into game. So one thing in particular is facial animation improvements, things that the shaders will do to make them look even more detailed when characters are talking. In particular, Nance and Sims get to work with those character assets a lot. It's actually really cool because even though you're a tech artist and you're doing a lot of the more technical jobs and tasks, the cool thing is that you get to work with all the art assets and you get to study how they're made, what actually goes into it, what the thought process is to make an asset, make it efficient, make it look good, make it, just make it shine. And one of the cool things as well is that I got to do a lot of mocap stuff. So I got to work in that studio a lot with EA as opposed to just doing the kind of towel boy kind of chores that I did when I was at FIEA. I actually got to be the head engineer there for a while and run the shoots. And it's actually really cool because you actually get to, I always heard rumors about how EAC had demands and criteria for doing mocap stuff, and it's usually very specific. But in my case, I never got to talk to them about it. Now that I work at EA, there's this feedback where they tell me exactly what they want and how to make that studio produce it. So there are even cool instances where they got guys from EAC to come in and teach us how to use that studio to its utmost potential. The primary task that I did at EA, I can actually talk about these tools and nothing else. One of them is called Facelift and one of them is called Face Poser. Face Poser is the standard facial animation tool that's used in EA, period. Every game that you see where the face is moving, they use that tool. And my job is to make sure that it doesn't break and that it works better and that more features are added to it. Facelift is one of those features. It's a separate program that allows you to blend wrinkle maps into your characters in Maya. And I can't go into how that's utilized further, but essentially they link up together so that when you have facial expressions, wrinkles revealed. So it's a really fun tool, and I'm pretty much in charge of the facelift tool and getting it working for every game in Tiburon and probably everywhere else. Other tasks that I did was a lot of animation pipeline support. One of the things they asked me when I started was, what do you want to learn? Because the cool thing about the internship at EA is before you do anything, at least for the TAs, before you do anything, they ask you what you want to do, what your interests are, or where your strengths are. And then they start making you do as much as possible, a little bit of everything until you find something that sticks. And then you just focus on that. So what I wanted to do was essentially learn the entire animation process. So they taught me just that. And what, like 4 months later, I still don't know everything because it's just way too much stuff. But yeah, it's not as simple as just creating a character, animating it, just shipping it over to an engine. There's a huge amount of processes that you have to do. But learning it is really useful. And learning how to create tools to kind of streamline that process is even more fun. What did I learn? Yeah, nothing is permanent, not even cuts. You think that when a feature gets cut, it's done, and it's moved on, and you do something else. Sometimes that feature that got cut will come right back. Like a month later, people will decide, you know what, we want this again. So they make you get right back on that horse and start working on that feature again. Sometimes with the same deadline that they had originally planned before they cut it. You want to document everything as much as possible. I know everybody here talked about it a ton. There's like a Wikipedia type of thing, kind of like how they have the FIEA wiki. There's something very similar to that in EA, and you want to make sure to update that so everybody can see what you're doing and how you did it. Otherwise, you're going to have to explain what you did to every individual person that asks, and it gets incredibly tedious and cumbersome. You want to embrace all incoming problems. Even if you don't know how to solve them right away, you don't want to just pass it off to the next person or just say, I don't know how to do that, and walk away, because that just doesn't fly. You want to, if it's a new problem, even if you don't know how to fix it, normally the person asking you for help will appreciate the fact that you're helping. So they'll work with you as much as they can until you get the problem solved. And if you need help, feel free to ask. Don't be too proud not to. You're going to learn a ton of new stuff, just brand new things. Not just how to kind of do things, but how to think as a game designer, how to think as an artist. So they totally changed my entire perception of what an asset actually is, and it's really, really detailed, so that's really cool. The one thing that I'd like to leave off, though, is I'm pretty sure everyone in this team mentioned all the things that you want to do, all the philosophies you want to hold on to, but the one thing that I'd like to chime in on is the impression you leave is just as important as the task that you end up doing. It's not just getting something done and doing it right. People are like, good for you. You also want to make sure that to instill confidence in the person that asking you for anything. You want them to know that when they ask you for help, that they can rely on you. So they can always come to you and depend on you for things. And when you are at that position where you're dependable, then people will give you not just better tasks, but they'll invite you to try new features, actually make serious contributions to the project. So I think that's pretty much it for me, and I think that's all of us, right? All right. So any more questions?